As he said, you know, he's a Brit, right? I was gobsmacked by what I saw. He had never seen it before. And these lights traveling, they're called balls of light, BOLs. They've been seen so often that people give them a name like BOLs. They're seen to be kind of hovering over the field, sometimes more than one, sometimes in tandem, almost like they're sightseers after a formation. They're kind of checking it out, or maybe, who knows what's going on here, but it's part of the whole phenomenon. And here is a non-crop circle, right? This is another pteroglyph. In the middle of the night, a gentleman in Russia noticed that suddenly it was as bright as daylight. Okay? And then, you know, the light vanished, and the next morning, there it was. He could see it from his window, these perfectly created concentric circles in the snow with another series of concentric circles, smaller, but there's still several rings there overlying this series of concentric circles. And in 1992, 7 people got together and decided that they would see if they could communicate telepathically with the source of these formations, with whatever intelligence was creating with them. They started to meditate. Now, there was no agreement beforehand what they would meditate about. They just thought they would meditate. 5 of the 7 of them got this image in their minds spontaneously. And then the next day, there it was, which seems to indicate that yes, and there are a number of other examples of this where there seems to be communication between crop circle makers and those who are studying them.
So they came in the same area that those people were meditating? The next day it was right near them?
Right near them, yeah. Yeah. Isn't this a beautiful mandala, you know? And you see a pentagram, which in ancient Greek culture was seen as the 5-fold nature of humanity, talisman of good health, and the land upon which this was discovered belongs to a farmer who cares for sick animals. Now, this is clearly a sacred site in southern England, the Avery Stone Circle. Clearly, it's being honored with this beautiful formation, which you can understand why people would call this a web. Now, remember how you saw a lot of geometry that was used to make an earlier formation? Do you suppose there might be some geometry that's behind this one? Indeed, yes, there is, and there it is. So you can imagine that this series of concentric circles would be present for each of these. It's just done once, so you can see the idea. But for each of these circles, it would also be surrounded by concentric circles in order to make all these lines here. And notice they're, again, perfect 5-pointed star, the circle here, another 5-pointed star, another circle here. Everything fits just right. And then there are these seemingly random and perhaps humorous thought bubbles just attached off to the side. Now, often you'll notice that in a particular year there seem to be themes that are explored. It's almost like an artist exploring a particular theme. And here we certainly see heavenly bodies and orbital rings. And in this one, this is clearly meant to be our own solar system. This is the asteroid belt surrounding, well, there's the sun, and then there are 4 metallic planets, you know, the smaller planets, of which we are the 3rd. And there's, you know, Mars, Mercury, and Jupiter are the other 3. But if you look at our orbit, this is the orbit that the Earth belongs on, but Earth is not there. The other 3 metallic planets, shall we say, are represented, aren't they? Well, where is Earth? Some people think that this might be a reference to the very obvious fact that when you're standing on planet Earth and looking into the skies, you can't see planet Earth as a heavenly body because you're standing on it. It's a question of perspective. Therefore, perhaps that's why Earth is not represented as being visible on this diagram. I don't have anything to say about any of these. I just want you to enjoy them. There are many such photos. that, well, could this be double helix, right? Is that symbolic of the double helix? Perhaps. The double helix of DNA. And now we have Stonehenge right here, right across the street, this intricate pattern of circles, Julia set. Hard to even count how many circles that would be, all arranged very precisely. And here is the eyewitness account, because this happened in broad daylight. That's atypical. Usually the formations occur in the middle of the night. So here we have someone who watched it happening, a mist about 2 to 3 feet off the ground. It was spinning around. It was a circular shape, seemed to get bigger and bigger. The mist got bigger and bigger and swirled faster. There was a clear space between the ground and the mist. Strangest thing this person had ever seen, calm summer's day. Imagine if you had been there watching it too. And as if that's not impressive enough, the triple Julia set later that same month, look at the size of that pattern. Remember, these are tram lines where the trucks go on the field. These are huge formations, absolutely stunning. And each of these circles here has a standing tuft in the center. Just a little touch there, a little detail. Standing tuft of plants in the center of these circles. And could that be symbolic of the wheel of joy? Perhaps. And then once again, Stonehenge is honored with a formation which looks like 6 trees emanating from a central point inside a circle. Two in one field. Now, if you can imagine, if you're a researcher, you might be curious. How many of these standing sections of crop are there? There might be some secret code or something, some might be significance to that number if you know the number and how many total squares there are. So you're in the field and you're starting to count, walking down the row here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait a minute, 7, 6, 8. Which one am I on? Oh, I better go back to the beginning. I've lost count. And then they start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Oh, I've forgotten what number it is. Darn it, I thought I was keeping close track, but I guess I've forgotten. This has happened more times. It's almost as if the analytical side of our brains, the left brains, are taking a little bit of a holiday, and the right brains, our right brains, which are more intuitive and spatial, and perhaps those are heightened when we're inside a crop circle. How else to explain why people who ordinarily can count just fine are not able to do so very competently when they're inside a formation? Let me explain a fractal. Picture my hand, and picture if I was able to sprout hands, tiny hands, from each of the tips of my fingers and my thumb. Tiny hands have now sprouted. And then picture much tinier hands have sprouted from those fingers. That's called a fractal, a repeating pattern that goes on and gets smaller and smaller. So here we have a triangle, and then triangles are stuck on each of those sides to give you a 6-pointed star, and then triangles are stuck on each of those sides to give you this figure, and it can keep going on, right? But in this case, it doesn't keep going on and on. It just stops right there, and then these ornate circles around something right near something called Silbury Hill. Now, Silbury Hill is a very interesting public works project. Thousands of years ago, before there was any fossil fuels to move Earth with, people spent a lot of time and energy to make this huge hill. Why did they do it? Well, we've talked about electromagnetic energy on the Earth's surface flowing in the landscape. And if farmers put seeds, the seeds of their crops, on top of that circle, then they would get the same effect as the photo that I showed you earlier of the corn in 1991, the corn taken from the center of the crop circle that had been exposed to energy and was much more vigorous in its germination and more stress resistant. And that is, in fact, what John Burke, the B of BLT, he wrote this book, Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty, about this hill and about pyramids all over the world. He calculated, and here's the studies to prove it, germination of corn kernels placed on top of the Lost World Pyramid in Tikal on a morning with extremely powerful electrical activity compared to the controls. And you can see how much those seeds benefited from being placed right up there on that Lost World Pyramid. So there's the evidence. Another fractal. And there's the chalk that, someone a couple hundred years ago scraped away the sod to reveal a horse. You could do that. You could make anything you wanted, right? It's a form of art, I guess. But this really doesn't have anything directly to do with the sacred or mysterious formations, because they're clearly understood how this is done. Could this be sacred geometry? This is Vesica Pisces, the fish, inside this. And there it is, right here and right here. This one, by the way, is a hoax. This one was done by people. And while superficially it might seem pretty elegant or, precise at any rate, but it does not seem to me as eloquent as the others. It doesn't have the, it's really pretty boring to me as I look at it. And it also, you might notice how there are these little white lines that connect these circles. Well, the real deal would never have those white lines connected. It's clearly someone used those as paths to get from one circle to the next. And look at the pattern of the plants being swirled around, which creates this pattern as seen from above. And here again. So a lot of the artistry has to do with not only where the plants are bent, but how they're bent, what direction they're bent, so that when seen from above, it will shimmer in certain ways. Speaking of what happens from above, this thing that looks like a cone, a conical shaped cloud, appeared right above this formation.
While it was happening?
I don't know what the sequence was. It might have been afterwards. I'm not sure. This is clearly the representation of an eclipse. As you progress from right to left, there it is, the total eclipse right there. Remember the pictograms from 1990? Look at that one. Huge. Just keeps going and going. So you can see how, in the course of 9 years, how things have progressed in terms of complexity and size. And this name, Lucy Pringle, she takes photographs from above and she puts them on her website. You can look for her, you can easily find her website, Lucy Pringle. She also gives tours every year. You can sign up for one this year if you like. Predictably, I mean, she has confidence that she'll have crop circles to take you to because they happen every year, right? You're seeing how predictable it is. And what happened to her was she had a tennis injury that had been bothering her for quite some time and hadn't been resolved, hadn't figured out a medical solution to it. She went inside a crop circle, and after she left, she'd never felt that symptom again. She was completely fine. This ache in her arm or whatever pain it was that she'd had, completely gone. So she took a strong interest in finding out what does happen to people who go into crop circles, and not just people, but other effects. For animals, for example, animal behavior. Dogs will bark in a panic, or cows will moo before a formation happens. They know that something is about to happen that's totally out of the ordinary. Animals, as you're well aware, often are more sensitive to certain things than we are. Sometimes birds will fly overhead, but rather than fly directly over the crop formation, the flock will part and then rejoin after they've passed the crop formation. They don't want to be above the airspace of a crop formation for some reason. Mechanical failures. A truck has sometimes can just, there was one time when a truck approached a formation and it just stalled out. It couldn't continue through. Often there is a power outage the night of a crop formation. And the audio effect mentioned there, sometimes there's a trilling sound that can be after the effect, after the fact. You know, people who come to the formation to see it, they hear a trilling. It's almost as if the trilling sound is following them. So there are a lot of special effects, I guess you could say, for these formations. Here are some of the effects that Lucy has documented. Here, these effects are all quite unpleasant. And except until you get to the bottom here, feelings of peace, love and light, and a sense of presence are also, and it seems to be, and I'd love to ask Lucy this question, are you more likely to have the positive feelings if the formation has mellowed somewhat? You know, and if you go in right after it happens, are you more likely to have the negative sensations? I don't know what's happening there. This is her advice. Don't visit one of these formations if you're pregnant or thinking of becoming pregnant. Don't visit if you have a pacemaker, because it might throw that off. And don't bring your credit cards with you. They often get wiped. And it's documented that very many times when you go inside a formation, anything digital, whether it's a watch, a cell phone, a camera, all these things that are digital, they stop working. The battery drains, even if it's been recently charged. The battery drains mysteriously. You leave the formation and it's working fine. You go back in the formation, doesn't work again. What is going on here?
Is it only a certain time of year that takes place?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Time?
Well, the crop formations themselves. We have now begun a crop season, a crop circle season. There were 4 in April already, and they all.